because if you are a Marxist, then you're into revolution and into bringing down capitalism. So are you or aren't you?
Richard, you do come up with the most remarkable twaddle sometimes.
To be absolutely clear, you are not a Marxist. Fine.
Would you be prepared to negotiate with the Tory government, yes or no?
Absolutely. The whole country is suffering, and we have got a membership and a trade union that is prepared to fight for what we've got. What the rest of the country suffers from is the lack of power, the lack of the ability to organise, and the lack of the wherewithal to take on these employers that are continually driving down wages and making the working class in this country poorer year on year on year, while the rich get richer and dividends are accelerated and the stock market is reasonably healthy. We've got full employment. We've got full employment and falling wages, and that is a situation that has never happened before, and it cannot be tolerated by working people or by the trade union movement. That is just stuff that's written in Conservative Central Office for backbench MPs to spout.
So no sorry to veterans, Mick. Okay, so no sorry to veterans.
I don't want this disruption. I don't want people to be inconvenienced, and I want a settlement to this dispute. I can't do that with a backbench MP who's just learnt it off a script.
Well, hang on, let him respond to that.
No, Mr. Lynch, I'm sorry if you feel the need to ridicule me, but I'm just asking you what you expect your members to do.
Your questions
if agency workers
into the nonsense.
I'm asking you.
It as effectively as we can.
Actually, Mick, you don't know anything about my background or my community or where I come from. So
I can't even see you. I don't even know who you are. So there you go.
Well, there you go. So don't tell me who I am and whether or not I'm working class or whatever, any of those sorts of things.
I didn't tell you weren't working class. I don't even know your name.
Well, shouldn't you, Mick?
And many employers are taking this opportunity. They're using what is a temporary phenomenon, COVID, and the temporary phenomenon of people being told not to go to work as a smokescreen to get rid of decent conditions, decent pay rates and decent agreements. And nobody in our community should tolerate that from this government of billionaires who tell everyone else they've got to tighten their belts while they're raking it in.
I was watching that obviously when he was doing his stuff a couple of weeks ago. For me, as someone who does the media, is very funny to watch, because what it really highlights, and I think maybe most people don't really realise this, is basically how many of the people you see on the news, the presenters, the panellists, the experts, the vast majority of those people do not have any particularly strong knowledge on the thing that they're talking about at any given point in time. So you saw there the presenter, what was it, the Sky News presenter, Kate Burley, is it? She will have just been given like a little fact sheet that morning, and she will have read that with 10 other stories, you know what I mean? She's probably done 10 minutes of reading about that, okay? And this guy, Mick Lynch, it's his job, right? It's his life. He knows everything about these strikes, right? But it's not just her. I don't want to single her out, right? There's an MP. That MP will have done 20, 30 minutes reading on that thing, And even when you get experts who get called in, those experts, the kind of ones who go on the news, they're sort of generic media commentator experts, They might have some broad knowledge in a particular area, but they don't know anything about this particular strikes. So what you actually see when you watch the news, and it's kind of mad when you think about it, is you are watching a conversation between 3 or 4 or 5 people talking about an important issue, and none of those people actually has much understanding of that issue. And what you've had here is this guy, Mick Lynch, who is a complete expert walking in and just being like, well, that thing's wrong. That thing you said is wrong. You're full of nonsense. This stuff you're talking is just total nonsense. And it highlights really this absurd situation that we have in the media and the news, where the level of, especially in economics, I mean, economics is the area I'm an expert on, so I can tell you this with absolute certainty, right? In economics, almost everything you hear on the news, above absolute basic level of simplicity, is just useless. You might as well ignore it. And often even the simplest stuff at a basic level is wrong. If you look at what's happening now, with the cost of living crisis, the government gave out £450 billion to the rich. Unbelievably huge amount of money £10,000 per person. So the average rich person's getting like 100, 200 grand cash. And that was always obviously going to cause a crisis of inflation. Then the inflation crisis happens and everyone's like, oh my God, how did this happen? You know, that can only happen when you have a system like we have now, which is basically rotten all the way through, where every single person in that system has no understanding and no level of knowledge, right? And I think that is really ultimately the obvious consequence of this system, economic system we've built of how we give jobs out, which is all the jobs basically go based on who you know and what your background is. And nobody's actually considering, well, should we get some actual genuine experts in? You know, so this guy, Mick Lynch, genuine expert, knows his stuff. He comes in and he can just wipe the floor with all of these people because they have no idea what's really happening, you know. And, you know, we talk about the strikes themselves. I think it's important people realise what's happening, you know. When the government prints that amount of money, effectively what they're doing is devaluing the currency. And when they give it to rich people, effectively what they're doing is massively increasing inequality, right? So then you see this situation where the rich make an enormous amount of money, the fastest ever increase in millionaire and billionaire wealth ever in the country, and ordinary people can't afford to pay the bills, right? And all the prices go up. You know, let's be clear, inflation is coming up to 10% now. And, you know, most of the people watching will not have received 10% increases in their pay. You know, I think most people will be lucky if they're getting 3 or 4%. That means in real terms, people's pay is falling 6%, 7%. At the same time as the billionaires have never, ever, ever made more money. So it should, in my opinion, never in the history of economics has it been more obvious what needs to be done. You know, the government gave a ton of money to rich people. That is destroying the lives of poor and ordinary people. You need to take the money back from the rich people and use that to support the lives of poor and ordinary people. And, you know, in that sense, we want the same thing. But I think more than anything, what it highlights is that we've created an economics media which, for want of a better term, is shit, basically. And it just takes one guy who actually knows his stuff to come in and highlight how little these guys know. And, you know, it's important that people know what's really happening, because what is really happening is really, really hurting ordinary people. And, you know, that is basically like the mission of this channel, and that's the reason why I decided to start this channel. You know, I was writing for newspapers and I was appearing in the media, and I started to realise, like, you know, this is like a room full of idiots, and it's not a space from which we can actually tell people what's really happening, you know. So you know, good on Mick Lynch, and you know, it's nice to see somebody who, I don't know his background, but seems to be from an ordinary background, coming in with a genuine knowledge, actually being given a platform for once. And, you know, I wish it happened more. But it highlights, you know, how bad information people are receiving is. And it highlights how important what we are doing is. Because I don't see anybody else giving genuine, reliable information about the economy to ordinary people. And if people don't know what's happening, people can't stop it. And if we don't stop this, it's going to get worse and worse.
At the moment, these guys are profiting from a crisis that is going to keep our economy in the stump for 50 years. There is one other thing they can do with that massive amount of income. They can buy your mum's house.